he's coming off as a big bully. And whether you guys know him a million times better than I do. I know him, I respect him, I like him, I admire him, but he still looks like a bully to most people who are getting a headline of this across the country. Well, I mean, we're discussing it on the #1 sports show in America, not because of anything Prime has done on the field, because quite frankly, he hasn't done very much. Off the field, he's lost most of his team. Deion looks very small and petty here, and the entity that looks worse than Coach Prime is the University of Colorado for sanctioning this.
That was Paul reacting to the news that the University of Colorado had effectively decided to silence a reporter because of the critical comments he wrote about head football coach Deion Sanders. The university confirmed Friday that it would no longer take questions from Denver Post columnist Sean Keeler at football-related events. Coach Prime said this about Paul on RG3's new podcast, Out of Pocket. He's talking about us. How can we be irrelevant and you're talking about me? Every time I turn around, somebody's sending me a quote that you're talking about me. All right, there's my guy. Hi, Paul. Good morning. All right, the saga continues. The saga continues, Paul. What's your response to what Deion had to say on RG3's pod?
Listen, he wasn't reacting to what I said that you just got through playing. I didn't hear anything in Prime's response about whether or not he was a bully or a hypocrite or why he won't let certain people ask questions. He was talking about something I said 5 or 6 weeks ago about the University of Colorado really being an irrelevant program without him, which was a compliment. So Molly, it didn't mean very much to me because it was a fairly irrelevant reaction. He did say something that I agree with. He called me a dying breed in the profession, which I'm proud of because I really do believe that the media should be treated with respect and not have selective persecution like he is using out there, not only with this reporter from Denver, but other reporters as well.
A couple of things here. First off, and we're as guilty as anybody, the whole world, because Colorado won at TCU last year, went gaga over Deion and the Colorado program. If you go look at the finished product, that product was a disaster. They didn't make a bowl game. They weren't over 500. And Sports Illustrated made him the Sportsman of the Year. What? Sportsman of the Year for a team that goes 5 and 6. How was he?
He brought a lot of new eyeballs to college football.
But he's not the Sportsman of the Year.
I'm just saying, he's a superstar. He brought a lot of new eyeballs to college football. His son's the star quarterback.
All right. At the end of the day, what was the final record?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, to start it off, it was high. You had all celebrities there at the games.
I get it, and I understand there was some juice there, and I watched Colorado USC bet them and everything else, wanted to support them. But the end result was not very pretty. So that's number one. You got to be fair. I mean, they didn't even finish 500, and he was on the cover of. He was the Sportsman of the Year. I mean, how in the world did anybody think last year that the Sportsman of the Year was?
Well, you heard him. Everyone's always talking about him. You heard him.
That's which is, and listen. He came in the studio last March. I had a great interview with him. I've been a big fan. He's a great baseball player. I get it, but hold on now. Anytime you start attacking the media and telling the media you can't ask a question, this is a columnist. This is not some guy, from the Fort Collins Times. This is the Denver Post. It's a huge paper. You're going to come up small when you start saying that. You can come to our games and you can be around, but you can't ask the head coach a question? I mean, come on. I mean, Deion's got to be bigger than that. I mean, geez, you're afraid to answer a question? And I don't know anything about the reporter. So, I mean, is he taking unnecessary shots? I can't answer that. I'm not out there.
They say he's taking unnecessary shots. They say that it's gotten personal. They say that, they brought up, racial insensitivity when it comes to him in terms of his reporting and his words on
but if that's the case,
his family, that's what they say.
Well, then kick him out of the program entirely. He's still allowed to go to the games, go all the practices. If he's been that detrimental, he's not allowed on Colorado campus. Do it that way, almost like he's doing it halfway. You got to answer the questions from the reporter. It's one question a week, and if you don't answer it, you look small.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people think right now.
Well,
about Deion.
let me take it from here. Deion Sanders is a friend of mine. I've known him for decades. Got a lot of love for him, and I know a lot of things about him that the average person doesn't know because I'm one of the people he trusts enough to communicate with on that level. Having said that, I'll be right here on national television, and you can put Paul Finebaum up on the screen as well, please, so I can see him. He's wrong. He's wrong about Paul Finebaum. Let me tell you why he's wrong about Paul Finebaum. because that same man that's on that screen right now that Deion Sanders was talking about is the same Paul Finebaum that has praised Deion Sanders on many, many occasions, including last year, talking about the attention that he brought to college football, how much it was much needed, how the scarcity of black coaches in the history of college football, what he did to elevate the profile of African Americans and what they could do in the sport of college football. The person who came to primetime Deion Sanders' defense was Paul Finebaum. And so when Deion Sanders, who's very popular for telling you, bring your receipts, know what you're talking about, do your homework, et cetera, it may have behooved him to do his homework on Paul Finebaum when it comes to him. Because even though Paul Finebaum was critical of him the other day and last week, for most of last year, Paul Finebaum was praising him. Paul Finebaum talked about how he deserved the job at Florida State. Paul Finebaum talked about how it would be great if he were in the SEC and he had a hold of a better program as opposed to being in Boulder, Colorado. So as much as I love my brother Deion Sanders, and he is my brother, and I love him to death, I also love Paul Finebaum, all right? And I know that Paul Finebaum has come to his defense on many occasions. So in that regard, as it pertains to what Deion had to say about Paul Finebaum specifically, respectfully, you're wrong. He's wrong about that. Now, having said all of that, here's what I would say to you, Doggy, and everybody else. Deion Sanders got to win football games. That's true. Can't lose 6 straight. Can't lose 8 of your last 9 games. Can't go 4-8 and think that you're not going to get criticism, especially when you started off the season beating TCU, who was the national runner-up at the time, and then you looked at the reporters and said, do you believe? Until they confirmed for you, they believe. And they were like, it's just one game. Do you believe? Oh, you don't believe. And he waved them off. That's how he started the season. But in the process of bringing that up, are we really going to ignore what he inherited? I mean, my God, Colorado was straight garbage. And they were beyond irrelevant. They weren't even in an abyss, because even when you're in an abyss, somebody knows who the hell you are. Nobody's paying attention to them. Their program was trash. Deion Sanders inherited a 1-11 team. He had about 51 transfers, for crying out loud. He overhauled a lot of different things, and it brought a national attention and national profile. So I didn't think that he deserved, like you said, the Sportsman of the Year or whatever. But I understood what Sports Illustrated was thinking at that particular moment in time, because what they were saying is, you have this black man in college football where Nick Saban resided at the time, where Kirby Smart still resides, where Dabo Swinney resided, where Ryan Day resided, where Jim Harbaugh resided. And you had the college football world transfixed on him. It wasn't until they received their comeuppance against Oregon and Coach Lannon did his pregame speech and made sure the cameras was rolling while he did it to embarrass them, and then went out on the field and embarrassed them. It wasn't until then that humility kicked in. So you got to take into consideration all that he inherited. You had a vastly undersized defense. Yeah. They were giving up. They were getting ran roughshod over. But his son is a superstar in the making. This brother's got all the potential in the world. Travis Hunter is one of the elite players in the game. All of these things, you got transfers coming out, people gravitating to Boulder, Colorado. First Take was there. I was there with Shannon before that, when you did what you're mad about segment because I didn't invite you.
Never do.
All of this other stuff.
Okay,
we got to go to the baseball game. But the point is, all of those things you have to take into consideration. You can't just ignore. You can't just look at Deion. Now you can look at them guys and say the record, got to win football games. But last year, come on now, look at what he inherited. Look at how he changed the culture. Look at the attention he brought to the program and to college football. You can't diminish that significance from Deion Sanders. You just can't.
Paul, before you jump in, and obviously, as Stephen A. mentioned, it transcended sports, but we keep talking about the 4-8 record. I do want to mention 5 of those 8 losses were one-score losses. Paul?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Stephen, I obviously thank you, and I agree with you. And my criticism of Deion is for all the reasons that you have laid out. I caught some flack a few weeks ago because I literally threw his name out on this show in the event that Lincoln Riley was replaced. That what a great figure Deion would be, because I am a fan of his. But what I'm not a fan of are all the things we've talked about, and that to me is extremely disturbing, because I know how many people he affected. I was on this program 5 weeks into the college football season last year saying, he has taken all the oxygen out of the sport because he's the only thing people are talking about from New York to LA. That was very positive for all the reasons you laid out. And I think when he goes low, when he becomes petty, for whatever reason, because I'm not a psychiatrist, it takes away from what he can do and how great he can be. Molly and Stephen A. and I have had many conversations about what he means and where he could go. And I know for a fact that black coaches, particularly in the South, where I live, have had an incredibly difficult time getting hired because athletic directors just don't have the stomach for it. They don't want to hear from the fans. And to me, Deion has shattered a lot of that. And it was one reason why I felt like he needed to be somewhere other than Colorado, where it would just be constant turmoil. But as far as his criticism, doesn't matter. The fact that we are talking about him supports part of his theory. But if Deion doesn't win Thursday night, and if he gets off to another bad start like he finished, we're not going to be talking about him here. And that's to the detriment of what he represents.
My question to Steve is this. Should you treat the Denver columnist like that and not let him ask a question? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well, I will say this to you.
We have sound, by the way. Can we play that real quick from the Denver columnist, Sean Keeler? Let's play that.
Fear is the four-letter word I keep coming back to, and it's everywhere. I think players are afraid. I think coaches are afraid because they saw what happened to the first-year staff. I think media are afraid, and I think Colorado administrators are afraid. And if they win, it'll all be justified. And if they don't, grab your popcorn.
I want to say this about the columnist Sean Keeler. I don't know him, and I haven't seen his work. And I hope he understands I'm not judging him. When I bring up the stuff that I've said about him, I'm saying that's what they're saying about him. I'm not saying these things about him. I don't know him. But I will say this. Deion Sanders has a right to say, I don't want to talk to you. That wasn't my issue, Dougie, as I explained to Paul Finebaum the other day. My issue was Colorado as a program getting involved and sponsoring that kind of behavior. Deion has a right. If you're personally attacking me, I have a right to tell you to kiss off, kick rocks, get the hell out my face. I'm not answering any questions from you. What I don't want is the program to piggyback off of that.
The school mandating the protocols.
Like, wait a minute now. So he's keeping his credential, and he can still come to Colorado events and stuff like that. But he can't answer the question, and you're going to issue a press release as a program because you're supporting your coach. Well, wait a minute now. The coach is a big boy, and I'll say this on national television. Deion Sanders is a grown man. You don't need the program to stand up and say, well, we support his decision to not talk to a media member. There's plenty of coaches that have dismissed and kissed off media members that they don't like. All of that pomp and circumstance wasn't necessary because now it brings the wrong kind of attention, in my opinion, to Deion from the standpoint, okay, what he's trying to say about Deion now, the bully on the block and all of this other stuff, comes into play because now they're going to bring him up as a player with Tim McCarver. They're going to bring him up as a coach at Jackson State. They're going to bring up what he did with the reporter for CBS. They're going to bring up all of these things that have nothing to do with this because now the focus is going to be on Deion's behavior instead of the columnist. If you simply don't talk to him, but you talk to everybody else, all right, and you leave it at that, that's fine.
It's a decision scenario that you don't need. You don't need that kind of distraction. That would be my point.
I just feel like Deion is not thin-skinned at all whatsoever, that there must be more to this, that it got to this level.
I don't know enough about
it. And I would love if he came on our show and we were able to expound upon it and talk about it, but just knowing Deion all these years, he's not going to let one local columnist get under his skin.
But he already did.
And change his, no, there's got to be more to it. There's got to be,
I'm saying, Molly, there is more to it.
So there's a deeper level.
But because of Colorado getting involved.
I get it, but I'm saying from the Deion standpoint, I don't know why Colorado chose to double down. What the thought process was, with their PR.
They should have stayed out of it. Deion's big enough to handle it himself.
What I want to go back to, because obviously you're much more inside the locker room with this, Keeler sound specifically, where he talked about that culture of fear and everybody's fearful of Deion. From what you've been told, does that seem accurate?
I think what he's talking about is from a media standpoint. I can't answer to the players because the turnover there, I think, speaks for itself. But a lot of reporters today are scared of the people they cover because they don't make that much money, jobs are scarce, and coaches, by and large, are bullies. And I'm not talking about Deion Sanders here. I'm talking about some of the best names in the industry. And because the media is so upside down, I'm not talking about people that are on this show. I'm talking about local beat reporters that all of us were at one time. They have no voice, and if they cross a line, they'll get shut out, and that's what irritates me. And I think I can speak for Mad Dog and Stephen A. as well. So I think that's what he's referring to. I wish Keeler would be more specific. Right. He has a bully pulpit. He may not be able to talk to Deion, but he can certainly talk to us.
And this does not apply to Deion Sanders. I'm just speaking generically to piggyback off of Paul's point. In the day and age that we're living in, with the advent of social media and so many people having podcasts, obviously having social media accounts or whatever, they view the fourth estate, the media, in a far more diminished state. Their belief is, we have a voice. We don't need y'all anymore, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And so as a result, if you're a local reporter, you're barely, I'm not in anybody's pockets or anything like that, but you're barely making six figures. You know, the vitriol that can come your way because of people targeting you that you may write about, talk about, et cetera, and they don't like you and what have you, it can squash you. It can squash you. I see professional athletes trying to invoke that level of power all the time, which is why one of the reasons I come on the national airwaves, if you see, most of the time, I'm coming to the defense of reporters doing their job, because I'm saying you're just trying to stop them from doing their job. Yeah. If you're a columnist, you are entitled to your opinion.